One of the key reasons I switched to Justworks was because of the simplicity of the platform. It's easy to use. I am a huge techie. I love AI. I love all, the widgets and gadgets and gadgets, except Excel.
Welcome to Taking Care of Lady Business, where we have conversations about power, value, and success on your own terms. I'm talking with women who are building influence, wealth, and authority, not by following someone else's playbook, but by deciding what success looks like for themselves. These are candid conversations, hard-earned perspectives, and no BS insight from women who aren't asking permission. They're setting the standard. I'm your host, Jennifer Justice. Most people call me JJ. Let's get into it. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Taking Care of Lady Business. I'm Jennifer Justice. Today, we have the fabulous Susan McPherson. She has a company called McPherson Strategies. She's very strategic in the way that she works, networks, surrounds herself with people who are loyal and care about her and business, passionate, purpose-driven, and we're going to hear all about it. Hi, Susan.
Hi, JJ. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I am good. I'm on the upside to spring, so I'm elated about it. You just got back from Venice and then going to Spain?
Yes. Yes. No complaints. Although this is not the norm for me by any stretch of the imagination.
And what I want to talk about, a lot is your team, and you are traveling all over, and your team is now global, and so it's funny because people think about when you scale a business, you think about like growth, but like if you don't have the infrastructure there, it's kind of impossible to actually grow, right? Because that just means you put together like toothpicks and some glue, right? Some Elmer's glue, and any little thing can throw it off. So in this episode, which is in partnership with Justworks, I really want to get with you, talk about modern leadership, modern operations, starting a company in this time, because you've spent 30 years building businesses through human connection, not just a transaction, and given all this time with AI and technology, which is great and can be amazing for us to not worry about all those things, right? And we're going to get into what Works does because of that. You still need that human touch, right? So why don't we start by you talking a little bit and tell us through that lens, like what you guys do at McPherson Strategies.
Sure. And thank you for having me here. Very, very excited. And we are a social impact communications and strategy firm. I founded the company at 48 and had, like you said, many, many years working in the private sector, but I never ran my own business. And to be honest with you, all these people in my life would say, Susan, you should run a business. You should run a business. And all that kept coming into my brain, the monkeys in my brains would say, you don't know how to do Excel well. There's no way you can manage a business. I mean, all these things now I understand, but back then I was like, I can't run a business. So anyhow, I was putting up artificial barriers. And obviously, once I did found it, and you know this from running your own company, you don't know what you don't know, right? And then over the next few years, you start to learn, oops, I needed that, or oops, I needed that. And when it was time to move the time contractors to become full-time employees, that's when I had to find a platform to provide payroll, to provide benefits. And I'll be honest with you, the first provider that we selected caused more trouble than good. One of the key reasons I switched to Justworks from this, well, we're not going to name the platform, was because of the simplicity of the platform. It's easy to use. This is the woman that was afraid of Excel. So just, that gives you some idea. I still prefer humans. I am a huge techie. I love AI. I love all, the widgets and gadgets and gadgets, except Excel.
Right. Exactly. Right.
So
tell us more about what you do in the company itself.
Sure. We provide counsel to corporations, to NGOs, and to social enterprises on how they communicate the impact they are having in the world to the audiences they want to reach. So our clients range from Nike and HP to TIAA, and then a whole plethora of nonprofits working across sectors such as racial justice, advancing women's empowerment, empowering sports, and helping ensure that girls can have equal opportunity in sports. Leadership Now Project is a client. Leadership Now Project is a membership organization of business leaders doing what they can to protect democracy. Alight, formerly the American Refugee Committee, International Planned Parenthood Federation. So I could go on and on and on, but we help them, again, communicate the impact they're having. So it may be PR, it may be advocacy, it may be messaging, it may be events. However is the best mode operandi to reach their audiences.
And you've been doing this, I mean, basically your whole
13
career,
years.
but you
13
started
years.
this all by yourself. You found the right PEO in Justworks and doing that and building that company. And then, like, how did you know when to do that? What was the friction point that you were like, I just can't do this anymore?
Well, two things. One, once I moved my contractors to be full-time employees, I couldn't just, monthly pay them checks, right? I had to set it up because taxes, you have to pay payroll taxes. You have to provide benefits. You have to provide time off. You have to provide vacation. You have to, if you have employees who live in different states, let alone different countries, you have to abide by the various state laws. So, yes, I can do a lot of things. I could not do that and still run the company.
Like, you would have to hire somebody, probably a lawyer, and
Oh.
be in different states at that point.
Oh, absolutely. You
Yeah.
would need a lawyer that works in every one of those states.
Expensive.
Yeah. Extremely expensive. So by using a PEO, that solves the problem. But unfortunately, the first PEO that we chose at this time, and it was 2019, turned out to be a mismatch.
So how did you make that decision from turning contractors into employees? Because I think that's really relevant for a lot of smaller female-founded businesses, right?
Yeah, because there is that part of so many of us that are fearful of being bag ladies or ending up not being successful. And the fear of when you make that commitment to hire people, all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, what if we run out of business? What if all our clients leave? How am I going to make payroll? But one of the things I've learned over the years that if you are a good employer, whether they're contractors or employees, you still owe them, fair treatment. You need to treat people well regardless. So once I got over that fear, I think also over the 6 years of the company before making this choice, I could look at our financial track record and I could see we were growing year over year over year. But I think in 2019, I started to give more thought that this is something, right? And it makes sense to put you had mentioned, the building blocks, the foundation. As much as contractors are phenomenal, the next best thing, they're going to move on. Now, employees can do the same thing. So you have to create an environment for your employees that makes them want to stay. And having a good PEO is one of those critical decisions that can make or break. Because if people don't get paid on time or their paycheck is screwed up or they don't know how to go onto the platform and fix, their healthcare benefits, they're not going to be happy either. And then they're not going to be productive.
Yeah. And if you didn't have that, you would be dealing with this all the time and not being able to do what you do, right?
Right.
When you finally had employees and you had to give them benefits, other than the salary, right? What do you find that is the most important to them?
Vacation and a good choice of benefits, right? When you're a small business, we know that our healthcare options aren't as great as if you were a, $100 billion company, right? But because with a successful PEO, with Justworks, they're able to buy en masse for all of their small businesses. So even though we're 10, 12, 15 people, it depends, over the years, we have access to better healthcare, dental care, vision care, 401k, gym membership, things like that, that again matter to people, young and my age.
When you first started, how many employees? Because that's the other thing. Everybody thinks they're too small.
We started with six full-time employees, and then we scaled up. We had 16, and unfortunately had to do a layoff this past fall for the first time in 13 years. It was hard, and again, glad I had a good platform that could make it less painful in terms of just all the paperwork. and state laws, because again, it's different. New Jersey is different than California. That's different than Oregon. That's different than Canada.
Different minimum wages and different, like everything. Yeah. But you also have global employees, right?
Yes, yes.
Dealing with these companies all over and then different countries, have much different laws, right?
Yeah, and I also have employees that chose to move overseas and wanted to stay at the company. Your gut feeling first is how am I gonna do this? Prior to using JustWorks, previous provider did not offer this service. So when I had an employee who had been with us as a contractor and then became an employee in Canada, for instance, we were able to transition her very, very easily. And they take care of, Canadian taxes and the laws, right? And because you want to be compliant with Canadian law. And the same thing with an employee in Bulgaria.
We live in New York City. It's expensive as shit right now, right?
Yes, and social impact never brings in the same kind of monthly retainers than if I was selling, Coca-Cola.
Exactly. So, you have to think about these things. People want to move, they want a different lifestyle. And you are all about like, you know, network, business saying yes, like, how can I help you? Like, these are all your platforms, right? And so, in making sure you're walking the talk, not just externally, but internally, is super important to, your company. So, the ability to do that, right? You have a book, right? Talk about your book a little bit, and we'll get more into that kind of philosophy and how that plays out in your business and how you run it.
So I wrote a book a few years back called The Lost Art of Connecting. And it is all about how do we show up in life leading with how we can be helpful to others rather than be extracted. So when you and I were both coming of age professionally, we were taught to network by walking into rooms and thinking about what can we get? How can that person help me? How can this person introduce me to that person? Very transactional, very, in many people's minds, kind of icky, right? And my whole kind of raison d'etre or philosophy is when you walk into rooms, and believe me, I'm intimidated in every room I walk into because I'm like 2 feet tall. I'm not 2, I'm 4'10", which is also very tiny. But most people don't see me. But when I walk into rooms and I think about, how can I be valuable? How can I be helpful? How can I instead walk out with some contacts that I can maybe make introductions to, maybe send some interesting articles to? It takes away that intimidation. You end up leading with curiosity. Well, the book came out during the pandemic, and a lot of folks who saw the title thought it was in response to the pandemic. But I've been very fortunate because, with this world that we're living in now, with a lot of political vitriol, with AI everywhere, with younger generations who grew up digitally first, now in the workforce and don't necessarily have the tools to properly connect and communicate, the book has stayed relevant. The fundamental reason I wrote it, however, was because 6 years into my company's business, I founded the company in 2013, so 2019. I saw that 90% of our business was inbound. What that showed me was all the connections that I had built in my 20s, in my 30s, in most of my 40s, because I was 48, came back to support. So my thesis of leading with how you could be helpful wasn't just a nice thing to do. It was actually really, really financially rewarding, not just to me, but to my employees. And I wanted to share that message because I think so many people, and certainly many women, are fearful or don't have the confidence because they think that they're not going to be successful. But we tend to think in our 20s and 30s that making connections don't matter. But if somebody had told you when you're 25, well, Susan, in 25 years, you're going to found a company, and because you took all these meetings and said yes and was helpful, these people are going to be purchasing from you. Maybe I'd think twice about not wanting to do that.
It's really about making the ask of what you want to do, but being authentic to yourself.
Well, that's it. And it wasn't like I was sitting there saying, well, I'm going to introduce you to somebody, and then in 25 years, I'm going to come back and get you to buy from me. Like, I didn't have the burning desire ever to be an entrepreneur. Never.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is as women, we want to authentically connect, right? And so to do so, we often do it through, family, fashion, beauty, fitness, wellness, etc., instead of through business. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but we have to get better at the business side of things and talking about money. We all know that. We've been told that forever, but I see it on a daily basis. Not, we will ask like all the right questions of the doctors for our kids, or, the babysitter who's going to watch them, or, your future romantic partner. But for some reason, well, not all of them, but, for some reason, when it comes to business or, can I get more money or whatever, like that's the part that makes us so scared. But if you're doing it authentically in a way that you understand, and again, like you were saying, when you walk in a room, you're intimidated, that you understand that you belong in those rooms and that you have something to offer, because there are things that you can offer that are just business. But ultimately, we are doing business and we can be transactional and are authentic.
I'm certainly not suggesting that all we do is walk around and say, can we help?
No, of course, we got to get paid.
Right. We got to get paid. We have to extract value. But I also think when you help others, the help comes back. I feel incredibly privileged and grateful for the fact that toiling in the trenches that I did by being helpful came back to help me.
Well, so how do you put guardrails on that? Because if somebody, that's one of the things that, like scope creep, people like taking advantage, women aren't trained like men are. If I hand you over a client that gives you $1 million, I expect you to get me something. I do. You know what I mean? Like, and usually it's around 5% of that value. Like I just do. And men do it all the time. Like a $50,000 watch shows up to their buddy who introduced him to it. But for some reason, women are so used to asking for stuff for free.
I set up referral arrangements with every single, anytime I talk to somebody, whether they're a friend or, a former colleague, that to me, I'm going to pay people. Like I had a friend last year get us a $200,000 client. She got a 10% finder's fee.
Hell yeah. 10%. Okay. Look at you paying 10%.
I know, man. I was like, oh God, what did I just do? But no.
Not have 180,000 if it were not for
Exactly. I am a big, big believer with my younger employees who unfortunately or fortunately have always been women. I've never been able to recruit men.
Regardless, but I love that you do that though and set up these referrals, but how do you make sure you're getting paid if you refer somebody like that?
When we sign the joint referral arrangement.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think that's really important to hear. I remember when, our mutual friend, Rebecca Minkoff, and I were having lunch once, and she was like, why are things not moving forward for women? Why does it seem like we're moving backward? And I was just like, look, when I did a deal for Jay-Z, or I did a deal with his partners, Jay Brown, and they would get a bunch of money. I would get a bag, and I would get a substantial bag, like a $5,000 bag would show up. But I made a referral to somebody who bought a hotel chain, and I got a gold hardware Birkin bag. Okay. Now could I have waited for the financial fee? These bags are value that I can resell to this day and make more money than they bought them for. They aren't just some $2,000 Gucci bag. They're like the Lady Dior bag, a Chanel bag, you know what I mean? And things I love,
And something that you wouldn't go buy yourself. Either.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Something you wouldn't go by yourself, but these things matter. And it's like that giving each other business, you want to feel like somebody is going to pay you for that. Right. And it's fine. Like what I'm hearing you say is like, you give, you're helpful. There's the article, there's an introduction, but if something comes of value, you expect to get value from that. Right.
1,000%.
Yes.
The other thing too is sometimes the help you give to others, yes, it's nice if people can do something right away, but I also think over time, you can also, right? I mean, I definitely see both sides, but over the years, if I go way, way back in high school, people would say, Susan must be fake because she's so nice. I get high off helping people. That's my dopamine, right?
Yeah.
But because I have, 10, 12, 14, 16 mouths, to basically feed, I need to make payroll. And there we go. So I've become more strategic, obviously, about when I am really, really helpful. And I just wrote a Substack recently on what happens when the connectors, the people that constantly are the doers and the helpers, what happens when they get burned out, right? The nurses, the teachers, they're always busy connecting and being helpful. Kate Lucio was one of the people I interviewed. Everybody has a different take, but in the end, they keep going because it does provide sustenance. It is like a vitamin of some
Yeah.
sort.
I mean, everybody
So,
asks me, I mean, am I, focusing on women? Did I make the most lucrative choice knowing all the data and statistics? No, but you know what? I sleep really well at night and I can look at my daughter and my son and said, I tried as hard as I can. I did everything I could with my experience, my wisdom, and my power to make this a better place and more equal for the two of you being the exact same birthday twins. So when you go out into the workplace, that you can feel like you both were treated equally, You have a saying, what is it? That it's like three words, like do, give.
the categories in the book was divided into gather, ask, do. And in gather, that's when you assess your own superpowers because you can't be helpful if you don't know what you have to give. You also, in that phase, think about how you can break out of your hermetically sealed bubble, meaning you connect yourselves with people who don't look like you, sound like you, the same race, age, and color as you, because inevitably you're not going to learn anything if you're only talking to people who are exactly the same as you. The ask phase is learning to ask people the meaningful questions that will get you ideas into what their hopes and dreams are. It's also learning to ask for when you need something. And this applies to what we were talking about earlier with not advocating and asking for raises, for the better office at the company, if those even still exist anymore. And if you learn to ask meaningful questions of others and then pay attention to how you can be helpful, then you get to the do phase. So gather, ask, do. And do to me is where I love to be. I mean, you're in communities with me. You see, I love to be like, oh, I'm happy to introduce you to da 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 da. Or you need to check this out. And do is when you take what you learned from your conversations or your research and you become that helpful, reliable, resourceful person that shows that you're trustworthy. And all of us want to be known as trustworthy and, quite frankly, as helpful individuals because the world is hard right now. And a lot of people are hurting too.
And it also allows you to do what you understand what you're best at doing, right? Asking of yourself, like, what should I be spending my time on and what can I be? Asking is a big part of the Justice Department. It's not just asking, it's who you're asking. And if you're not getting the right answers, you're asking the wrong people and making sure you're in that right community. So a little bit more about the structure of the company and women. The statistics are horrible, right? The pay gap, the VC money we're getting. And I think it's going down, and because most women are done with it, right? We're done with the corporate patriarchal system. We can't win in it unless we act like it. Emma Grey just doubled down on it, saying that's basically what you have to do in order to survive in this. It's like, okay, so great. She's not wrong. It's like, that's what she did and that's what she had to do. And when I was in that system, I felt like I had to do it too. I just didn't want to do it anymore. So we're starting these companies. And, it's like great that we're talking about Justworks and a PEO and somebody who can help do those other things. So what is the bucket that they can do? And then what about the things that you know of that they don't do? So people understand, like you can go to them and have a conversation.
Well, I was surprised to learn that they do now offer HR consulting. I think this past year, you would either need to hire an HR firm or have an HR person on staff. But now it's not part of the annual fee. It's like an additional, very, very small fee where you can have one on one time with HR experts. So that is something, I may consider down the road. You still need a company counsel. You still need a justice department for sure. You know how sometimes people dispense legal advice and then say, but we're not lawyers?
Yes.
That's what they would never replace what your legal counsel would do.
I know there was a CEO that told an old client of mine that they would give them legal forms. And I was like, oh, I can't.
No,
Like, come on. No.
But they are, soup to nuts, payroll, benefits. They partner with their, a 401k provider, Empower. That's how my employees get their 401k, and the matching comes through, payroll. They have a wide variety of partners that you can then access through the platform. So, for instance, one service we are going to take advantage of is shipping laptops. We've always just bought laptops and had them shipped to people. Now you can do it through a partner of Justworks.
Why does it matter?
Well, because you're not owning the laptops. So you pay a monthly fee and then your employees rent it. And then when they're done, they just ship back to you don't have to collect the hardware.
So you don't want to have to think about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like an Excel
Yes.
spreadsheet for me. Yes. But it's true.
And me
You know?
too. And me too.
No, it's true. There's just like so much that you have to
I
like
know.
make this decisions, as you said, which I know is super important for you. But it is for me too. Like when you have AI, you have these problems. You have problems with anything. You're just like, can I
Yeah.
just talk to somebody?
Yeah.
Like they have a human being that you can talk to, right?
1,000%. And that's when I had an employee who decided she was moving overseas. I, had a moment of panic. I was like, well, how am I going to do that? Is it going to be really expensive? What about the laws? What about compliance? And that's when, I went onto the platform.
And I don't want to distract or like, prevent people from hiring us, although we don't do immigration and we don't do those kinds of like things. That easily would have been like 5 to 6 hours of legal fees, if not more.
Oh,
That's
I
like
didn't even know.
$5,000, $6,000, right? That
Yep.
you
Yep.
don't need to spend. And you can still have a team that is global, that you can have a connection with, that helps you with onboarding, all that stuff.
And then you're not having to hire new employees to replace those because you couldn't keep them.
Amazing. So, look, we always ask one question before we end this podcast, and that
Okay.
is, what is the worst advice you've ever received?
When I was 31, it was in 1995, and my boss at the time told me that everyone hated me at the company and that I needed to get psychological help.
What? First of all, not even allowed. Okay.
No, of course not.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was, to make matters even worse, it was the night before I was giving my first speech to 300 of my colleagues at PR Newswire, which was my employer for many, many years. I don't know if that qualifies as advice, but her advice was to get help.
Why? What validation did she have for that? What did she say?
I
Look,
think it was her own insecurities.
yeah.
And, this was the mid 90s where very few women were, there was definitely, there is obviously still a glass ceiling of sorts, but in this day and age, I see mentorship programs, I see coaching programs that didn't exist then. And if a woman got through, she didn't want anybody else to also. And look, there were probably people who didn't like me. I don't think everyone hated me. It was devastating and caused a lot of internal kind of reflection on who I was and how I showed up in the world, but I'm still the same person. I think I got help just to deal with that advice, not necessarily help.
if I could distill it down to advice, you tell me, I don't want to put words in your mouth. It's that be careful who you take advice from. What do they have to gain, right? By putting you down, by not giving you the promotion, by not giving you the increase. If they have something to gain from that, that is not in your best interest, right? Then you're playing by a different set of rules. So it won't matter. They're never going to get the advice that you need, right?
It was a lesson also consider the source. Like that 31, you're still very young.
Yeah. You're very aware that there are not a lot of women around you that have escalated to the top, right? So I hate hearing about the toxic women at the top. I was just having this conversation last night about it, and like I do have some sympathy for them being and some empathy because I've experienced myself being called that when I literally was talking the exact same way as the male was talking to me, like, come on, team, you could do this. And be like, I was yelling for some reason.
Oh my gosh, how many times, Susan, you're too ambitious, you talk too much, you're too loud.
Yeah.
Oh, but isn't this wonderful now for the last 13 years?
Yeah.
I get to run the show.
Exactly. Okay, speaking of running this show, what do you have coming up? McPherson Strategies. What are you guys doing?
Well, lots of exciting things. There's so many different clients trying to figure out what, who, where, when. Now I'm drawing a blank. Oh my gosh.
Of all the amazing things you're doing.
Yes. Yes. Well, one of our clients is the Susan Crown Exchange, which runs something called the Million Coaches Challenge. The Million Coaches Challenge is helping coaches who coach your kids actually have better tools so they don't mess your kids up, right? Because we entrust our children to these coaches, and many of them have no certification. They could be just, the neighbor down the street. Yet when you think about our teachers, how much training and rigor they have to go through. So the last year and a half, over 1 million coaches around the country went through the program. And now we're starting to see the research of how that benefited, the children who are being coached. So it's very, very
I
exciting.
have some dads on from the Tribeca soccer fields to get into that training, by the way.
I'm sure they could find it. Just look up Million Coaches Challenge.
Great.
And it's located. We have our client, the International Planned Parenthood Federation, but we also have a coalition called Don't Ban Equality, which is made up of 1,100 businesses who have signed on to agree and to state that access to reproductive health care is a business, a workplace issue because it's creating equality in the workforce. And as of tomorrow, mifepristone, which provides the ability for 80% abortions in this country, could be outlawed, which essentially will roll back even worse than what Dobbs did in 2022. So we've been knee deep in counseling the coalition called Don't Ban Equality on how do they comment. And there was a big Forbes piece that came out yesterday, which talked about how this is going to affect businesses. Because we tend to think of it more as how it's going to affect the individual, the woman, her family, et cetera, which is, of course, important. But businesses have a role to play here and they need to step up.
Yeah. Amazing. What a great way to end that. Okay. Good for you. Go, Susan. So if people want to find you and the book, how do they do that?
The book can be found anywhere you buy your books, okay? Barnes & Noble, Amazon, you name it. And they can find me at Susan McP1 on any social platform. And then my company is McPherson Strategies. Oh, and my Substack. It's called Dear Connector.
Amazing. Sign up, everyone. Dear Connector on Substack. Thank you so much, Susan, for coming on to this episode of Taking Care of Lady Business. And to everyone listening, thank you. Until next time, I'm Jennifer Justice. Thanks to MedJet for supporting the Taking Care of Lady Business podcast. When you travel for work or internationally, the real question isn't if something could happen, it's whether you've planned for it. That's why I'm a member of MedJet and have been for years. If your security is threatened or you're hospitalized while traveling, MedJet can get you home and to the hospital you choose, not just the closest one. It's not travel insurance. It's about not leaving critical decisions to chance. If you travel regularly, it's worth having in place. You can learn more at medjet.com. Thanks for tuning in to Taking Care of Lady Business. If this was useful, subscribe and share with a friend. Make sure to check out the show notes for more on my guest and me, Jennifer Justice. Taking Care of Lady Business is a production of Lady Business LLC. See you next time.